Finally, after a few months of waiting, my test results are finally in. I got these on Thursday night, and one of them is it's a psychodiagnostic assessment, and the other one is my psychoeducational assessment. I'll explain what the difference between the two is at the end. So it starts off with identifying who I am and why I wanted to get the treatment and all that. Second part is about history of the problem, and yeah, it's just it's a story about my upbringing and how it's led up to where I am today. Then I finally get to some observations about my appearance and behavior. I don't know if you're curious about it, but it says that I appeared well organized and prepared for all testing appointments ahead of time. I engaged in a formal and polite manner, presenting with an anxious mood and flat effect throughout the testing. In the initial meeting, I presented a tense, somewhat stiff sitting position and tapped my foot throughout the meeting. I seemed to relax as I focused more on the tasks of testing. I maintained very little eye contact in the initial session, but made more periodic eye contact as sessions progressed. My speech was generally of normal volume, somewhat slow rate, and circumstantial. I was observed to use idiosyncratic and descriptive language, appearing to take my time in finding the most accurate way to express myself, sometimes becoming verbose in my answers. My thought process was linear and remained goal-directed. Behaviorally, there was no evidence of thought disorder. I was observed to be oriented to person, time, and place. My motor and sensory functioning appeared grossly intact, although I was observed to have an awkward pencil grip and strained writing during tasks requiring to draw or write. I reported feeling anxious about the testing. During the course of the initial session and structured interview, I stated that in novel situations such as testing, where I don't know what is expected of me, I feel particularly anxious. When my examiner checked in with me as the testing progressed, I reported that I felt uncomfortable because I don't know what to expect. And then it just goes on to further describe all that. Next up, we have the evaluation procedures. That's just the outline of what I did. The interview I had to do, and then there was an interview with my therapist, with the person who was giving me the test, and there was a review of treatment notes, and then it goes on to just explain the tests that I had to take. It's called the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, 3rd edition. I was tested for my sensory and perceptual traits, trails, A and B finger tapping test, grip strength test, lateral dominance exam. And then whole bunch of these other ones. They don't really explain, unless you actually were to take it. Like the Rorschach test is an ink blot test. And then thematic apperception test, that's where I have to put these different photos in order, like in sequential order. Anyway, here's where it really gets into it. Test results and interpretation, cognitive functioning assessment, overall intellectual functioning. There are significant differences within the scales comprising my verbal VIQ and my nonverbal PIQ abilities. Percentiles indicate where one's performance falls compared to one's cohorts in the normative group. For example, 99 percentile indicates that I perform well, as well, or better than 99% of the group, but worse than 1%. A more accurate measure of my intellectual functioning is, therefore, my performance on specific index scores. I scored in the very superior range on the Verbal Comprehension Index, VCI, in the low average range on the Perceptual Organization Index, POI, and in the average range on the Working Memory Index, WMI, and within the borderline range on the Processing Speed Index, PSI, with the POI and PSI being relative weaknesses. DCI at 98 percentile, POI at 14 percentile, WMI at 47 percentile, and PSI at 5 percentile. The observed discrepancy between indices is quite significant. My verbal skills are significantly better developed than my nonverbal skills. The level of discrepancy between my verbal abilities and my nonverbal skills appear to be extremely rare, occurring in only 0.3% of others in my age group. The pattern of scores seems to indicate that my nonverbal skills may have been underestimated by current testing because of my slow processing speed, affecting my performance on some of the timed subtests comprising the nonverbal indices and scores. In addition, my performance within the average range on the most abstract, untimed nonverbal tasks, matrix reasoning, indicates that my nonverbal reasoning skills may be closer to the average range. Attention and concentration. I performed within the average to extremely low range on tasks sensitive to distractibility and requiring attention and concentration. On tasks where I was verbally read information and asked to perform arithmetic and sequencing tasks, digit span, letter numbering, sequencing, without pencil and paper, I performed solidly in the average range. Also performed in the average range on a task where I was presented visually distracting elements and asked to scan and mark with the pencil according to specific rules. Symbol search. However, my performance dropped to the extremely low range on a similar task where I was asked to draw lines connecting numbers randomly placed on a paper in order. Similarly, my performance was in the extremely low range when I was asked to draw lines alternately connecting numbers and letters randomly placed on a paper. My lower performance on these tasks seemed to indicate a difficulty with attention and concentration when I'm required to process and sequence information through the visual motor channel as opposed to the verbal auditory channel. My performance discrepancy could also have been further impacted by my slower motor speed related to my observed awkward pencil grip. These results seem to indicate that I am able to screen out distracting stimuli, remain focused, and divide my attention as well as others my age when manipulating auditory and visual information. But I showed significant difficulties when the task required visual motor integration. Sensory perception and motor function. My auditory, visual, and tactile perception were assessed. I demonstrated no abnormalities